Where there is injury, pardon. This is about healing, whether it's physical or emotional. Bringing a sense of pardon to the presence of injury. I've just produced a tape with Hay House called The Secrets of Your Own Healing Power, in an address I gave to a chiropractic convention a while back. And the secrets of your own healing power are basically to understand, well, here's a letter that was written by a woman. Her name is Gladys McGarry, and she wrote a book called The Physician Within You. Wonderful book. She's a medical doctor. And she relates a conversation with her son Carl, who had just finished his internship and was specializing in orthopedic surgery. He told his mother about his fears about having people's lives in his own hands, and she wrote him this letter. She said, "Carl, as a surgeon, you may pull an incision together and suture it well, but you cannot make it heal. If you think you are the one who does the healing, you have a right to be scared. But if you understand that you are a channel through which healing moves, and that you are contacting the healing force within your patients, you have nothing to fear. You will have awakened the physician within them and sent them on their way to heal themselves." Healing, to me, is bringing the presence of a faster and a higher energy to the presence of this thing we call injury or disease, which is really the reaction of our bodies to our minds. And our minds have, again, the illusion that we're separate from God, and therefore our bodies are commanded by an ego mind rather than a sacred mind. And that when we move ourselves, and this is one of the biggest questions that you had in all the questions I read last night and this morning, it was about, what about these people who get diseases? What about children who have diseases? What about people who get AIDS? And all of these kinds of things, and how can you ask them to take responsibility, and so on. And it's not an issue that is an easy one to deal with because it's very emotionally entrenched. But just like starvation is part of the perfection of this universe that I don't like or agree with or understand, and so I put my attention on my desire to end it. And I know that that comes from God as well. I feel the same way about disease. I think that some children incarnate to be here for a certain amount of time. And just like my father may have shown up here to teach me compassion and forgiveness by being the kind of person he was, I think a child might show up in a body that has AIDS or in an injury or whatever. Again, if you understand and believe and know that there's a perfection to this universe, and there's a force operating that holds it all together, and that we have an infinite amount of time to work this whole thing out, we begin to no longer tell ourselves that death and these kinds of things that are taking place that are so painful for us are not a part of the perfection of it all. They are. And when you begin to bring pardon to the presence of injury, what you also do is you bring a higher consciousness. And when you bring a higher consciousness, you begin to detach yourself from this body and realize that that's not who you are. I am not this thing that I occupy. And once you're detached from it, like a Helen Keller wrote some of the most powerful and beautiful and inspirational material with a body that hardly worked at all. And when a Lance Armstrong, who is diagnosed with testicular cancer, has 2 tumors the size of grapefruit in his stomach and in his lungs, and 14 the size of golf balls in his lung areas, and 2 the size of oranges in his brain, and is told to die. And his wife brings a bike and puts it at the foot of his bed, and somehow something magical, because he was told, not only will you not walk again, you won't live and breathe again. He not only went past it, transcended it by looking at that bike that his wife placed at the foot of his bed, but he went to the most grueling test of physical endurance there is on the planet and won the Tour de France. After that diagnosis and that experience, the Tour de France takes 22 days. It's 2,000 plus miles through the Pyrenees, highest mountain peaks, lowest mountain peaks, every single day riding. The most grueling test of physical endurance there is. And not only did he win it once, but the next year, just to emphasize that this wasn't some fluke, he did it again. Twice. He's only the 2nd American ever to win the thing. And he did it 2 years in a row after that cancer. And he wrote his autobiography, and it's called It's Not About the Bike. I recommend you read it. He brought something to the presence of this, and a miracle took place. And the law that has ever allowed any miracle to take place in the history of humanity, it's still on the books. It hasn't been repealed. It's there. Where there is injury, let me bring pardon.